Good evening. I am Garrett Allman, Chair of the Illinois College Fine Arts Series. Welcome to this evening's program entitled The Organ on the Hilltop, Exploring the History, Mechanics, and Sound of the Pipe Organ, with Homer Ferguson, organist, and the Illinois College alumnus from the class of 2000. Originally, Homer was to come back to this campus that he loves to perform in person, but that is not possible due to the current pandemic. We plan to bring him back to campus next season for a concert live on stage here at Rammelkamp Chapel. Homer and I decided that for this virtual program, rather than present a full-length organ recital, he would take you, the viewer, on a tour of how the organ works. Just what is inside that big case. He will take us through the organ in his home church in North Carolina, recently built by the eminent organ builder Charles Fisk, an instrument similar in design to our whole camp here in Rammelkamp Chapel. He will tell us about the Rammelkamp organ as well, and will conclude the program with a brief recital of 3 works to illustrate the variety of sounds of the organ. Please welcome Homer Ferguson.
Good evening. I'm Dr. Homer Ferguson, your recitalist, lecturer, and presenter for tonight's program offered by the Illinois College Fine Arts Series. I am also an alumnus of Illinois College as a member of the class of 2000. Tonight, I was scheduled to be with you in person on the Hilltop organ in Rammelkamp Chapel. Safety protocols prevent that from being a reality. Yet the show must go on. So this evening, I will offer you a program in 3 acts. The first is a presentation of the history of the organ at Illinois College. Second, I will take you on an organ crawl inside this instrument here, the C.B. Fisk Opus 145 of Emmanuel Episcopal Church in Southern Pines, North Carolina, where I serve as organist choirmaster. I'll give you a demonstration of how the instrument works and take you inside so you can see the pipework and mechanism. Finally, I will offer a brief recital demonstration of the organ, paying a bit of tribute to my organ professor, Dr. Rudolf Zeiderveld. Thank you so much for joining me this evening, and I look forward to joining you in person soon. The first pipe organ at Illinois College was located in the chapel of Jones Memorial Hall, built in 1896 at the time of the building's completion. The organ was constructed by the Hinners and Albertson Company of Pekin, Illinois. It is most likely that this was a stock model organ of 2 manuals and of mechanical action. This was not the first pipe organ in Jacksonville, though. The city established itself as a center for education and mental health in the 19th century, and it is thought that the first pipe organ in town was a Henry Pilcher instrument of 2 manuals constructed in 1860 for the Illinois Institute for the Blind, now known as the Illinois School for the Visually Impaired. From that time forward, the educational, state, and religious institutions of Jacksonville would continually invest in the pipe organ, installing and maintaining a significant number of instruments for a city of its size. On April 23, 1962, the new 1,100-seat Rammelkamp Chapel was dedicated. Named after the 6th president of Illinois College, this facility became not just a religious building, but it also housed classroom space and quickly became the primary performance venue for musical events at the college. Initially, an electronic organ was installed in the chapel. It was as the college approached its 150th anniversary, and under the leadership of 11th President Donald Mundinger, that a promising new future was imagined for the college, which would reinforce its traditional strengths and develop new programs and facilities in the fine arts. The McGaw Fine Arts Center, originally called the Sesquicentennial Building, renovation of Rammelkamp Chapel to improve its acoustical properties, and the installation of a new pipe organ, as well as additions to the endowment fund, were provided by the $3 million 150th Anniversary Fund. The committee for the new organ was chaired by Dr. Arthur C. Hart of Arnsville, Illinois, and included members Ruth Melville Belatti, Illinois College Director of Development Howard Jarrett, instructor in music Rick Erickson, and students Otis Thompson and John Goldsboro. The committee selected American organ builder Hilltop of Cleveland, Ohio, a firm that continues to build pipe organs as it has for more than 160 years. At that time, Walter Hilltop Jr. was the firm's president, the fourth generation of a family of organ builders, and served as the tonal and structural architect for the project. The organ took almost a year to construct and consists of 3 manuals, 39 ranks, 30 stops, for a total of 2,065 pipes ranging in height from 20 feet to a speaking length of less than 1/2 inch. Most of the pipes are constructed of an alloy of tin and lead and are powered by wind supplied by the large electric blower located in the basement of the chapel. The organ is a mechanical action instrument in a freestanding red oak case. Its reeds are modeled after French classic design, and the case is topped with a copper trumpet enchant modeled after such stops from the 17th century. The dedication of the new organ was part of an entire spring celebration of the sesquicentennial of the college. The instrument was dedicated on the evening of Friday, March 30th at 8 p.m. with a recital given by Catherine Crozier. Catherine Crozier was a graduate of the Eastman School of Music and had her national debut recital at the National Convention of the American Guild of Organists at the National Cathedral in Washington, D.C. in 1941. She traveled the world as a concert artist, and shortly before dedicating the organ at Illinois College, she had performed a solo recital and performed a concerto with orchestra at the inauguration of the organ in Alice Tully Hall at Lincoln Center. The dedication evening at Illinois College opened with a welcome by College President Donald Mundinger, a reading of Psalm 150 and Philippians chapter 4 verses 4 through 9 by Rick Erickson, followed by the dedication by the college president and a dedicatory prayer by Chaplain John Langford. Catherine Crozier presented a recital of organ music by Bach, Buxtehude, Couperin, Distler, Siffler, and Marcel Dupré. The recital also premiered a new organ composition by composer David Eisel titled Pastoral and Rondelet, which had been commissioned by the college and the Hilltop Company for the occasion. The college conferred 2 honorary degrees that evening. The first was presented by Professor Don Filson to Catherine Crozier for her incredible accomplishments as a musician. The second was presented by Professor Ivor Yeager to Ruth Melville Belatti. Ruth Belatti had been the roommate of Catherine Crozier at the Eastman School of Music and were both students of Dr. Harold Gleason. Mrs. Belatti would then go on to study organ pedagogy and performance at the American Conservatory in Fontainebleau, France. Her teachers were organ virtuoso Marcel Dupré and Nadia Boulanger, the most important female composer, conductor, and teacher of leading musicians in the 20th century. Mrs. Belatti came to Jacksonville in 1937 as a faculty member of the Illinois Conservatory of Music and became a musical force for good, in the decades that followed. On Saturday, March 31st, Catherine Crozier and her husband, Harold Gleason, presented a lecture demonstration on performance practice and organ instruction in the 17th century. Dr. Gleason was the former head of the organ department at the Eastman School of Music, as well as the private organist for George Eastman. Harold Gleason's method of organ playing remains a standard text for the study of the pipe organ. For more than 40 years, the Hart Sesquicentennial Holtkamp organ has been at the heart of the musical, artistic, and collegiate life of Illinois College and the surrounding community. For this part of the program, or Act 2, we're going to have an organ crawl inside this instrument, which is Opus 145, built by the C.B. Fisk Organ Company of Gloucester, Massachusetts. Now, by comparison to the instrument at Illinois College, the organs are very comparable in size. In fact, this organ has a few more pipes than the college instrument, yet the college instrument has an additional keyboard. So the comparisons that I will make will help relate the two instruments and give you some insight about how the pipe organ works. Now, every pipe organ is controlled by something called stops. And these are these knobs that you see here at the organ console. Some of them have special functions, but most of them turn the sounds of the organ on and off. For example, the 8-foot open diapason. All right. Or perhaps I want to use a different color, which this is the 8-foot spire flute. Perhaps I want to use a string sound. Or perhaps a reed. How about an oboe? So what I'm trying to demonstrate to you is that each of these knobs has a different function, and we'll get into those in a minute. Of course, you see the keyboards here, but we also have a pedal board, which is down here. The keyboard has 61 notes from C to C. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 octaves. The pedal board is just like the manuals in that we have white keys and black keys. There are 32 of them here, and instead of playing with the fingers, you play with the feet. And of course there are different sounds here as well. As well as some of the lowest notes on the organ. And some of the loudest. Now, the stops that control the pedal are found here on the left side of the console. The stops that control the lower keyboard or the great division are found here on the right side of the console. The stops that control the upper keyboard or the swell division are found here, just above the upper keyboard. You will also notice a whole lot of other buttons located between the manual keyboards. These are pistons. On this side are general pistons, which control all of the stops of the organ at once. Using these general pistons, I can make quick changes to the organ very rapidly and in any combination I really want. So let me give you an example. This is the organ case of Opus 145. It is constructed of solid white oak. In the facade are the 16-foot principal pipes of the pedal. They are constructed of almost pure lead, and the pipes are hammered such that the organ has a bit of an aged look to it, as it was only constructed in 2015. But there is a tonal reason for doing so, in that it gives the pipes a very vocal quality. Here is the organ as it stands in the room. It is at the front and in the center, such that the organ can speak down the length of the room. This is the exact orientation of the organ at Illinois College, both instruments in freestanding cases. I have opened the top of the organ console so that you can get a better view. You'll notice the back of the stop action is here. These control the various sounds and couplers of the organ. But what is more important is what you see here. The keys extend the full length back where they meet trackers. These trackers are connected to the back of these wooden keys with hoist nuts. You'll notice the keys are made out of cowbone, and the black keys are ebony, of course. But the energy that happens here is transmitted through the back of the key to the tracker, and through a series of tracker runs, makes its way into the chest, where a palate is opened, air is admitted into the pipe, and the sound is created. From the console, the trackers run straight downwards to here. It's at this junction where the trackers that operate the upper keyboard, or the swell division, are located here, and they meet at this square to run this direction. The great trackers are right here, and they meet at this square, and their energy is transferred horizontally. And then the pedal trackers are here, and they also meet at a square. They're connected with these hoist clips, and then they run, well, it's really at an angle actually, underneath the choir loft. From here, you can see that the trackers run at an angle along this aluminum framing, and the trackers meet at the coupler stack, where through a series of squares they now run vertically up into the organ. Underneath the organ is where you can also find the control system that operates the stop action and the combination action, or memory system, of the organ. To see what happens next, we'll need to go inside the organ case. We'll follow the action to where it meets at the chest, and where we will watch the pallets open, which allow air into the pipes. We'll also see the various levels of the divisions and some other details I think you'll find very interesting. We are now looking at the coupler stack of the organ. The coupler stack has a few functions. Its primary function, though, is to combine the different keyboards on the organ if that is something that you want to do. Sometimes you want the sounds that are on the upper keyboard or the swell division to play on the lower keyboard, and sometimes you want the sounds that are on the upper or the lower keyboard to play on the pedals. Here you will see the trackers for the swell division. They're going to run up into the organ to the highest point in the instrument. And here you see the trackers. Again, these are carbon fiber that operate the great division or the bottom keyboard. And then over here, we will see the trackers that operate the pedal division. That actually is going to run underneath the floor, and we'll have a look at that in just a moment. For the sake of convenience, we'll stop following the swell keyboard trackers, and we'll look right here at the great keyboard trackers. You see they are running vertically to this roller board where the motion is transferred vertically, horizontally, and then vertically again. And you can see that happen here. I'll demonstrate by playing some notes at the keyboard. We are now looking directly into the wind chest of the great division. And you see this tracker run here, comes into the chest and is attached via this little shepherd's crook here to the palate. Inside this chest here is air, the wind of the instrument. It's a pressurized air. And unless one of these palates open, the pipe will not speak. Now that we've seen the mechanism of the organ, let's have a look at the organ pipes. You can see behind me that pipes are either made of wood or they're made of metal. I have two examples here in my hand. This wooden pipe is a stopped pipe. And let me give you some details. The air that comes via the chest and palate enters the pipe right here at the toe. And from the toe, it goes through the foot. And this is the body of the pipe. This here is the mouth, the lower lip, and the upper lip. And this pipe is tuned via this wooden stopper. And it's the construction of the pipe and the length that dictate the timbre and the pitch. This is a metal pipe. You could hear kind of a hollow sound here. You'll hear a different sound here. Higher pitch, of course. This is a flute pipe. It's an open pipe so that the top is open. And it's here in this vibrating column of air that the pitch is determined. So again, toe, foot, mouth, upper lip, lower lip. They call this the languid that's inside there. And then of course the body. And then we have a tuning slide on this particular pipe, which you can use to change the pitch up or down as you tune and regulate the pipe. Here we are in the midst of a forest of pedal pipes. This organ has three divisions, as you might recall. We have the pedal division, which we play with our feet. Then the bottom keyboard is the great division. That's over here in the middle of the organ. And then the swell division, which is at the very top. In the pedal division, we have pipes made of wood and of metal. This is the pedal warden here. This is the pedal trombone and pedal trumpet, the pedal principal. And then over here, this is big C sharp, almost the largest pipe in the organ, made of solid poplar, extending almost 16 feet towards the ceiling. It's here that the lowest notes of the organ sound. The great division of the organ is found in the middle of the organ case. This organ is special in that the great division is divided into two areas. Some of the stops are enclosed. These include the 8-foot cornopian, the 8-foot spire flute, the 8-foot harmonic flute, and a couple additions that will be made later this year. And then the other half of this division is unenclosed. That is, it speaks freely into the room, and here you find the pipes of the principal chorus. Traveling to the top of the organ, we find the swell division. This is the division of the organ that is controlled by the upper keyboard, and you can see these shades or louvers which operate and open and close to allow sound to escape or to trap sound. This is how the swell division is able to be expressive and gives the organist control over the volume of the organ. If we move into the division, we can see how the pipes are arranged, with the smallest pipes here at the back of the division and the larger pipes towards the room. We even have pipes on the ceiling. Over here on the left side of the chest are where we find the reed stops, the oboe, and a prepared for trumpet, which will arrive later this year, and a plangeux, the 8-foot string celeste. We have some mutations, these very small pipes here. This is the 1 3/5. This is the 2 2/3. This is the 2-foot harmonic flute. This is the 8-foot violin diapason. We also have a 4-foot principal, an 8-foot chimney flute, and you can see the little chimneys on here that give the pipe its name, as well as a 4-foot harmonic flute, which is located here, and the 8-foot viola, which is located here. 2 more stops will be added to the right side of the chest at a later date. Now, so you can have an understanding about how volume is controlled, I will move these shutters. There we go. From this vantage point at the top of the organ case, you can see the console as well as get a great view of the church. Now that we're back at the console, I just want to go over a few brief details before we conclude this portion of the program. You saw me operate those shutters, those swell shades. I get to do that down here where there are a couple pedal controls, and I can do that with my feet. There's one for the swell division. And there's one for the great division. There's also something called the shimbal stand on this organ. The organ at Illinois College does not have one. It's the little bell star. You maybe saw it up there on the box with the gold bells. It's wonderful to use at Christmas time. Finally, I want to talk about just the pitch levels of the various stops and the 4 families of organ tone. You'll notice that I talk about 8 foot, 4 foot, 2 foot. Basically, the principle is this. 8 foot stops, their lowest pipe is 8 feet in length. And then they get smaller from there. At the keyboard, middle C on an 8 foot stop is the same as middle C on the piano. However, 4 foot stop at middle C sounds an octave higher. A 2 foot stop sounds 2 octaves higher. A 16 foot stop sounds an octave lower. And then we have mutation stops, such as the Nazard 2 2/3, which is actually speaking an octave and a fifth. And the 1 3/5, which is speaking 2 octaves and a third. Finally, the tone families of the organ. We have, of course, the reed stops. These are stops that are imitative of wind instruments and brass instruments, perhaps in the organ. We have an 8 foot cornopian on this organ, which is a trumpet, just like similar to the great trumpet at the college. A brass reed inside the boot of those pipes that is resonating and vibrating away. There's an 8 foot hautbois or an oboe. There is the principal family of tone. This family of tone is not imitative of anything. This is the pure tone of the organ, the principals. This is the 8 foot principal. And then you can build on that. We have principals at 8, 4, 2, and then mixture, which is a combination of smaller pitches that create vibrancy and clarity to the organ. So here is 8 and 4. If I add the 2 foot, and the mixture, also have a family of stops called flute stops, and they sound just as you might imagine. This is the chimney flute. You also have it at 4-foot pitch. This is the traverse flute, or the traverse flute. And at 2-foot. We also have the string family. Here's the viol da gamba. And we can add its celeste, which is tuned slightly sharp. If you'd like to learn more about the individual stops of the organ, to understand in depth how the mechanism works and all of the different nuances of this particular pipe organ, I'd invite you to join me on a series of 5 videos that I created earlier this year on this particular pipe organ. You can find them easily by going to YouTube and in the search bar, Opus 145 Organ Tour, and you will find all 5 of those videos there, as well as other videos of the organ while it was under construction and during its installation process, as well as a wonderful time-lapse video we have of the organ when it was installed in 2015-2016. For this portion of the program, I will offer a few pieces from our repertoire. The first is the Prelude and Fugue in E minor, BWV 533 by Johann Sebastian Bach. This work is affectionately known as the Cathedral, as Felix Mendelssohn performed this in the early 19th century at St. Paul's Cathedral in London. Mendelssohn, as well as Franck and other 19th century composers, were part of a group of musicians that revived and rediscovered Bach's music. César Franck, one of the most famous organists of the 19th century, performed this work many times in his performing career, often at major dedications of new pipe organs. This work is wonderful for demonstrating an organ or testing an organ out because it has some really interesting characteristics to it. You have some singular melodic lines, you have some tremolo effects in the hands, you have chords, large chords in the hands, and also the pedal, a wonderful way to test the wind system of an organ. We know through documentation that Bach did this very thing, that he would be called to test new organs and to give his opinion about them. I learned this particular work while a student at Illinois College, studying under the tutelage of Dr. Rudolf Zeinerveld. In 1998, he led a study tour to Germany and the Netherlands and Belgium, and this is one of the works that I took with me as I tested out different and exciting organs. The Prelude and Fugue in E minor by Johann Sebastian Bach. Illinois College has a deep and rich history. The Yale Band and its first president, Dr. Edward Beecher, were leaders in the anti-slavery movement of the 19th century. Their location in Jacksonville made them and the college for a period of time quite unpopular, as many of the surrounding settlers were from border states originally. However, Illinois College and various places in Jacksonville became stops on the Underground Railroad. They became a beacon of light and hope for those seeking freedom. Dr. Beecher was also the brother of abolitionist preacher Henry Ward Beecher, not to mention the brother of the author of Uncle Tom's Cabin, Harriet Beecher Stowe. I bring all these things up because February is Black History Month, and I would be remiss not to recognize that in one of the compositions that I offer this evening. William Grant Still was one of the great classical Black musicians of the 20th century. He was born in 1895 and died in 1978. His Afro-American Symphony is probably his most popular work and is played throughout the world. But there are some interesting things about William Grant Still that you perhaps don't know. He was the first to have a major work performed by a major American symphony orchestra, that is, the first person of color. All these things are for the first person of color. He was the first to conduct a major American symphony orchestra, the first to write theme music for the World's Fair, the first person of color to conduct a symphony orchestra in the Deep South, the first to conduct on national radio, the first to arrange for a national radio program, the first to have an opera done by a major American company, the first to have an opera televised, and the first to write for the United Nations. He broke the color barrier for all of these very significant accomplishments. William Grant Still wrote two pieces for the organ, his Reverie, which I will offer, and his Elegy. Reverie was composed in 1962 as part of the National Convention of the American Guild of Organists. They published a book of organ works as part of that celebration called the AGO Prelude book. Reverie is the first piece in that book, and this book of compositions was published by Western International Music. When I acquired this music, I spoke directly to the wife of the man who had founded the company, who was a close personal friend of William Grant Still. In fact, their very first washing machine was a second-hand one that William Grant Still had given to them. It was so loud and it vibrated the house so much that they had to bolt it to the floor. His Reverie, or Daydream, is a beautiful, soft work that features jazz harmonies and also elements of the American spiritual. I will perform it for you using the strings and softer stops of the organ, particularly the flutes. William Grant Still's Reverie. In the latter part of 1705, a young Johann Sebastian Bach, only 20 years of age, walked from Arnstadt, where he was the organist at the new church, to Lübeck to attend a series of programs being presented by Dietrich Buxtehude, the preeminent organist of Northern Europe at that time. Bach ended up staying in Lübeck for 3 months, where he studied the music of Buxtehude, certainly met the composer, and when he returned, he had with him a handful of manuscripts of Buxtehude's music that Bach had copied. When he resumed his duties as organist of the new church, we have documentation that his harmonic and compositional style had been forever changed. Now, it's interesting for me to think about this story because Bach met Buxtehude at the age of 20, and it was about that same age that I was introduced to the music of Buxtehude while a student at Illinois College. The work that I'm going to perform for you here in just a few moments is the Prelude, Fugue, and Chaconne in C major by Dietrich Buxtehude. I studied this particular work with Dr. Zeiderfeld as a student, and there is another connection that I think is important to this program. You see, when the Illinois College pipe organ was dedicated on March 30th of 1979, Miss Catherine Crozier opened the recital with a harmonization of the hymn tune, How Brightly Shines the Morning Star, which is associated with Epiphany. The harmonization was by Bach. However, she followed it with a choral fantasy on that tune by Dietrich Buxtehude. And so, the opening music on the new pipe organ at Illinois College was by composers Bach and Buxtehude, both of whom you are hearing this evening. Now, I would like to extend my heartfelt thanks to Dr. Gary Allman and the members of the Illinois College Fine Art Series Board for your invitation to be with you today. I greatly appreciate the opportunity to be with you virtually, and I hope to be with you live on campus sometime soon. I would also like to extend my deep and most sincere thanks to Samantha Sauer and her assistants, Abby Garrett, Ren Parks, and Asia Watson, all of whom were critical in the photographs and written materials that were necessary for the history of the organ at Illinois College. I'd also like to thank the wonderful people of Illinois College, its students, its staff, its faculty, its donors, its trustees, its administrators, for continuing to make Illinois College a wonderful educational institution. It was a place that changed my life. It was Dr. Rudolf Zeiderfeld, my organ teacher of 4 years, and Dr. Garrett Allman, who took such a deep interest in nurturing my musical training, of exposing me to different composers and different musical ideas that helped form me into the musician that I am today. Their care, their consideration, and their dedication to the art of teaching are gifts that I will forever have because of my time at Illinois College. I'm grateful that I was able to major in music and then take that degree and attain a Master of Music degree and a doctorate in musical arts and keyboard performance at Arizona State University. Dr. Zeiderfeld and Dr. Allman and the faculty of Illinois College forever changed the trajectory of my life. And it was them that helped form me into the man I am today. For that, I am eternally thankful. So thank you again for joining me this wonderful evening. Thank you for all who are part of the Kalaf Al-Habtour archives at Illinois College, And thank you to all of you who have tuned in this evening or perhaps at a later time to enjoy this program. And now, the Prelude, Fugue, and Chaconne in C major by Dietrich Buxtehude.
Thank you for joining us for this delightful program. Thank you to our donors whose generosity make it possible to bring quality programming to the Jacksonville community during these difficult times. For information on how you may support the series, go to our website, ic.edu/FAS. Join us on March 17th at 6:30 p.m. for our next program, a virtual family program with storyteller and musician Chris Valillo. Thank you and good night.